Welcome to today's episode of The Heart of the Matter, where we're talking about youth development. And with me today is Mrs. Deton Ogwo, who is the Executive Director of After Schools Graduate Development Center, which focuses on helping our youth develop so that they can become employable. Deton, if that's okay to call you.
Oh, definitely.
I'm told that graduate unemployment is up to 60%. That means that only 40% of the people our universities are churning out are actually able to get jobs. And that one of the major reasons that they're not getting jobs is because they're not really employable. Okay. Now, and that's where you come in.
Yes, sir.
Here's the After School Graduate Development Center saying, we will take you and give you the skills you need. So tell us, how did you get into this?
Wow, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. I actually started this journey as a HR manager. I had been recruited from out of a country, and I had the privilege of bringing young people into the marketing function of a first multinational that I worked in. And I remember going back to my husband a couple of weeks after I got the job, saying, there's something wrong. There's a disconnect somewhere. I have the jobs, but I can't make recruitment decisions on these bright young people who seemingly have the certificate, but the little extras that we're looking for as a company is lacking. And I remember at the time he said, oh, so why don't you do something about it? But I said, it's the government's problem or somebody else's problem, but mine. Then I went on to another multinational, and at that point, we had to bring in 15 young people, 96,000 applied. And I remember reading through the applications and saying, this is a period of time that, maybe it's really time to really do something about this. But as God would have it, one day my phone rang, and the chairman of our board, Mrs. Iboka Oshika, said, I'm an employer as well. I'm an employer of labor. I'm an entrepreneur who's built, who's done well in business. But I think that there's also a problem. I'm not finding the kind of people that I need. Why don't we, partner? And 3 of us partnered. We have been able to train about 20,000 odd young people. And we have proven that whilst we say that our young people are not employable, it allows us to really challenge that concept. An education minister said at the time, about 2005 as well, that 7 out of 10 Nigerian graduates are underemployed, unemployable, or not employed or not fit for. And and answering the concept, maybe we need to ask, what does it even mean to be employable in the Nigerian context?
So there are skills that are lacking. What are the skills that are lacking? What can be done? Is this something the universities have to get involved in so that they can actually put these skills into them before they get their certificates? What is it that you're doing that could have been done?
As we know that businesses are getting very competitive. Yeah. Doing business in the world, anywhere in the world, is getting more and more competitive. And one distinguishing factor between a business that succeeds and one that doesn't is the quality of the people that it has to drive its vision. And where the academic system in this country comes in is to ensure that the supply meets the demand for quality people. And that is where we've had the challenge as a country. Some universities we've partnered with have also accepted the fact that it's not enough to just certificate our kids and say, you've got a BSc in accounting. If you have BSc accounting, what does the employer expect that person to come and deliver in the workplace? Well, and sometimes being employable means the softer side of being having the softer skills as well, the attitude, the knowledge base, skills. Being able to say, yes, I'm an accountant and I'm true to being an accountant. I can come in on day one and I can deliver what it is that what basic accounting skills are. And I think our universities are getting to that place where we must start. We have looked at enterprise development as a possible solution, but we must start looking at how do we invest in young people in their employable condition? Are they work ready? Outside of the country, we have career centers in most universities. One of the things I found as a HR manager is our young people, even the basic CV, sometimes are not able to put together. We're making our kids competitive. It is a competitive, a scenario when you go out. That school to work transition, universities need to make happen for our young people. Some may not even get jobs because we do have a structural unemployment problem in this country. How do we equip those young people with a compass for life? education should equip you for life and the workplace. And I think our academic system needs to be more responsive, along those lines.
What can be done about our academic system? It seems as if everybody's complaining about the system, but nobody seems to be addressing the problems and doing something about it.
I think it just goes to the many challenges that face us as a nation. The education sector, no doubt, also has its own, has borne the brunt of that. I was recently at a forum where quite a number of ministers spoke about, the spending in education, and I think that the minister is probably aware of the challenges. AGDC actually came out of a reform process that was championed by Mrs. Ezekwesili back then. I am aware that from the job creation committee that the president put up, there was a call for job centers, labor market information systems where supply and demand can meet themselves, have a word, retrain if they have to, and things like that. There's a whole lot of reform that needs to happen in the education sector, for one, and across board as a nation.
Now, you said that AGDC has been around for
5 years.
5 years
this month. Yes.
Now, in those 5 years, you've seen people coming in. How does a person get in touch with the AGDC, and what's the process that you're going to take the person through when they come through your doors? All right,
so I think the first thing that we did when we started was, obviously, it was a pioneering effort. So what are we trying to do? What we want to do is to wake up that thing inside of a young person that allows them to contribute in the workplace or in the economy. So find yourself a job or create one. Yeah. And the first thing that we obviously realized was that we had a huge number of people we had to get funding, and in getting funding, sometimes the first funding we got was from the International Youth Foundation, funded 70 people a quarter, and I think by the time we had run through the fourth stream, we had up to 7,500 applications from young people. It's a very competitive process, not because we want to turn people back, but because there's a funding challenge, and also we also wanted to prove the ideology that young people are capable, young people have potential. What the system hasn't done is woken up that essence. What the system hasn't done is provided people, with the skill sets that they need. So, and then we try to mitigate that on the short term. So the short term, we put them in a class for 4 weeks. What does a young person need to know? Of course, we ran HR forums with a lot of my former colleagues and said, look, what would make you give someone a chance?
So we've been talking about the process. Now, you've talked about how people that want to get into your program have to be whittled down because you just don't have the funding for everybody that applies. Now, say you've got somebody that now qualifies and you can take them through. What's the next step?
All right, they come in for a program, just an induction, just to let them know what to expect over the 4 weeks. And then they turn up from day one, the first day. The curricula is really around why do organizations exist in the first place? And the first thing that I think people leave with is that organizations don't exist to pay a salary. They pay for what you bring onto the table, the value that you add. And then, of course, we talk about what it means to be employable. What makes you employable? The soft things. Who are you? Where are you going with your career? We do try to, emphasize a lot of career orientation because that is really missing in our environment. And then, obviously, we bring in HR managers from different sectors to talk about, what things that they look out for in young people, so that people can prepare and tailor themselves in those directions. And we did wake up at some point and then went to try going the enterprise way as well. If you cannot find a job, don't sit at home doing nothing. How can you then start something on your own? And we've actually gone in a different direction. We're partnering with the Lagos State now, and our chairman, Mrs. Bukawa, is actually running a TV series on enterprise, how to start, what to look out for, and all of those things, because we do have to go in that direction as well. And one of the things that we emphasize in AGDC is relevance and application. Let's not put people in a class and then they can't even do anything with it. Let's just not inform. Let's create the structure that is necessary for them to then birth the idea. We're working on an enterprise pack right now. How do we, if someone wants to sew, maybe they need access. And sometimes there's a misconception in young people's minds that all I need to start a business is money. And that's sometimes very wrong. So we try to correct that as well.
We need to take a break now, but we'll be back in a moment. Viewers, stay tuned. We'll be back talking to Deton on youth development.
AGDC was born out of a burden. For a while, I'd been concerned about the quality of, as an employer of labor, the quality of the graduates that you meet, the issue of so many young people that are unemployed, or the word had changed from not being employed to not being employable now. And that was a bigger problem. Because you see, if someone is qualified for employment and doesn't find a job, you at least know that when that job is available, the person will get it. But now you had this whole population of young people that were being considered as being unemployable. And new terms were developing. You were now having what they call repatriates. And repatriates were Nigerians that had either schooled or worked abroad, and they were being considered as better qualified than the Nigerian graduate. So even though job opportunities would come up, the average Nigerian graduate will not get it because they were not considered competent. And people were spending a lot of money going on road shows abroad to recruit Nigerians who wanted to come back to work in Nigeria. Now, in reality, it's not a sustainable model, because no matter how many Nigerians you find from abroad, what do you do with the millions of people that graduate every year that are here who can't find jobs? So it became something we had to intervene in.
AGDC intends to achieve national rebirth and social change by investing in the employable and entrepreneurial capacity of Nigeria's youth. We all know that against the backdrop of the challenges in the education sector, private sector, and a great deal of employers have complained about the quality of our youth, and we're standing in the gap to create a solution both for youth and for employers of labor and our economy at large, such that we have the quality of skills that our nation deserves to drive its development. The 4 platforms are career solutions, enterprise development, advocacy and research, and gainful employment.
AGDC has actually made me very confident. It has actually made me very bold. It has made me have that very good team spirit, and it has made me a perfect and a good team leader.
Once these graduates come in here, we take them through a typical routine AGDC training program. And that program has several training modules. They get to learn things like what every CEO wants you to know, why organizations exist, personal branding, effective CV writing, and you'll be amazed at how much changes could occur in the way they present themselves outside by just a few words.
Ideally, my story would not be a unique one, except for the fact that I graduated from the University of Lagos, Chemical Engineering Department, 6 years ago with a third-class degree. But what had happened within then and now was that I had held a range or a series of, well, financially unsatisfying jobs. Well, right now, I'm a category manager with an organization in Nigeria. It's a subsidiary of one of the biggest media companies in the world.
Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're talking to Deton Ogwo about youth development and her work as the Executive Director of the After School Graduate Development Center. Deton, you've been working hard at this, and you're driven by your passion to see our youth become employable. What are the things you think that government can do to actually help you in your quest to see this happen?
Thank you very much, sir. I think the first is, aside from the previous Minister of Education who mentioned the fact that youth are not employable, I haven't really seen, there's yet to be very decisive action taken by our government to solve
and is this
and
federal
to
or
mitigate. Our state, Lagos State, I give credit. They are actually running and have sponsored and are partners with us on the Lagos State Ignite program. And Ignite has, we have an employability model, we have an enterprise model, and a lot of the things, a lot more structure we're going to put in place alongside the Lagos State government. But as long as we have restive youth in our society who have no idea of what to do with their lives, who have no compass, sometimes you put all that I found with our youth is just give them an idea of what life is and what they can do with their lives. That keeps them engaged. And I think what government needs to start doing is making that investment in young people. And it's not about just putting them in a class. It's putting them in a class we might need to start reorientating, and there needs to be programs either on the NYSC platform that prepares young people before they exit into the economy to understand, how do I even look for a job? Where do I start? Okay, if there's not a job, how do I connect? There's a lot of work going on in the agricultural sector. Do our youth find that sector attractive? How do we make that sector attractive to them? We talk about technical and vocational education. How do you make that attractive for young people? Otherwise, if we spend all the money and we put all the structure in place and youth are not channeled properly in that direction, it becomes a waste of time and money. So I think that government needs to understand, like other governments. I know that the American government, I was in a meeting where President Obama had mentioned the skills for America's future and had gotten the private sector to take a firm stand on what it means for youth to be employable. We need to do that. As Nigerians, we don't have a coherent understanding of when we really say our youth don't fit. And okay, so what does it mean for them to fit? Maybe we need to use mass media, to promote that. So there's a lot for government to do. I know that they are besieged with so many things, but it's becoming a security decision to also take that we must invest in young people. The education sector has done its own is doing its own bit, but for those who have exited the formal education system, we must do something. We cannot leave them roaming in the economy, restive and doing nothing.
I like that phrase that Obama coined, and we can have the skills for the Nigerian future.
Yes, sir.
What do you think those skills are?
I think that we need to look at what are the emerging sectors in this economy. I've been looking at the work that's been going on in the power sector. Do we really have the skills? Are we going to import the skills to compete in that sector? Can we hit our hand on our chest as Nigerians and say, we're not going to find skills from other sectors where people have already been trained and invested in? Or should we not also be thinking, what's the pipeline? What's the skill set that's required? There are young people who have done courses that might be relevant. Do we want to run conversion courses that allow them to be able to compete and add value, in those other sectors? So even agriculture, as long as we have a structural imbalance in, agriculture is something to, how do we make those things, attractive to the 70% of our population? So
a lot of Nigerians look back, maybe Nigerians closer to my age, and say, but we used to have groundnut pyramids in the north. We used to have coal. We used to have cocoa. All these things were there in Nigeria's past. So we need to focus on developing the skill sets that would help for the future. What about the parent at home? What can the parent do? I know the parents of my generation would say, you have to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, an architect. What should parents of today do about their
Thank you very much, sir. I was actually going to come to the fact that a lot of the blame sometimes we put on the academic sector. And AGDC actually championed a survey a couple of years ago, and we found out that parents also were culpable in what do we think is causing this unemployment problem. We know that against the backdrop of exam malpractices, there's been so much going on. There's a perception that persists in our environment that we need parents, all of us jointly have to correct, that you're not a success in life unless you're a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, as you have said. And I've also asked myself that question, that if my son came and said he wanted to be a plumber, can I truly encourage him to be one? One of the things I've said is that, look, there are major needs and areas of need in our economy, and we really must have. Would you rather have your son at home doing nothing, or do we want to get to a place as parents where we're encouraging and funding whatever their potential is right before, we don't leave it to the school alone? Are we, what are we doing as they are with us in the home to wake up who they are and what they can do? If my son, wants to play football, well, we think that we just have to go away from these glamorous sectors. Maybe we need to go back to that career orientation thing as well. Let's help people discover themselves and then feed them in channels, career channels that can help the nation at large. So to answer the question, I think there's a lot of the parents can do. I get calls from parents a lot. My son needs a job. You've just got to fix him now. And I said, you know what? We need to start having that conversation from when they're in GSS 3. Let them intern. I give my father credit. From 17, I worked. I had to work. I've worked in Kirikiri prisons. I worked in places where I thought my father was not my father.
What was the benefit of being an intern?
I think you learn and imbibe the culture of the workplace long before you really need the job.
Okay.
And that's one thing we need to do as parents. And I think a lot of schools are also doing that. Of course, the elitist schools, not the public schools, and the majority of people are in the public schools. So those are things that government can, internship programs where we simulate the workplace for them before it becomes a life and
so
death need.
employers have a role to play in this
Employers
as well.
have a role. Oh, definitely. But I've always asked, what would make it a business decision? What would make them make that business decision? Because business isn't set up for charity. So what would be a need for businesses to want to open up their doors to young interns? And I think what has always happened, for most of the CEOs I've spoken to, they're very open, and so sometimes the structure all the time, to handhold young people. But it's something that we really have to look critical.
Well, some of those young people could end up just making tea boys and girls.
There's some value in, there's always something to learn from making tea. All the things I've said. I think what usually happens is we found in education that a graduate then comes and says, but I'm a graduate now, why should I be doing those things? And I'm like, look, there is a problem in this environment. Take it as a learning. Nobody is degrading you. Nobody is saying, you know what you carry. You know that you're whatever, you have the potential to be CEO of the biggest company in the world, but right now you're on a process, you're on a journey. Learn what you need to learn from this and move up the ladder. But don't sit at home saying you're waiting for some employers are always saying don't make house calls. And looking for a job is a job, a full-time job as well.
I can give you one benefit right away of investing in interns, and that is that it's an important part of a generational succession plan.
Yes, sir. Wow.
If you're not planning for the generations that are coming behind you, your corporation, your institution will not exist in just a matter of time.
Yes, sir, that's true.
Again, we're talking about youth, and the youth are the future. I love the song that Michael Jackson used to sing, Children are the future, but they are.
Oh, definitely.
And if we ignore the youth of today, we're going to have a problem with the adults of tomorrow. Let's say you got a phone call from a new graduate, or maybe somebody who is just about to graduate, and he says, what do I do when I graduate?
I think the first question I'd ask them is, questions surrounding their next level. I'm always of a belief that every next level has a demand, has a discipline demand, it has a knowledge demand. So you're young, you're about to exit into a very competitive economy. What do you need to know? Who do you need to know? Because a networker is also very essential. What have you done that you can point to as progress or as success? Because you will be asked those. How ready are you, to imbibe the discipline that is required to get that job or start that business? Because it is, a friend of mine wrote a book, Getting a Job is a Job. It is a job, and it's something that you must be mentally prepared for, psychologically prepared for, because rejection is part of looking for a job. And the way that I like to, when we take our classes is, look, the same way an employer would say no to you, there will come a time when you're fully ready that you will say no to some employers, because if you get 4 job offers, you cannot take all 4 job offers. You would have to say no. So always think about it as is a transactional, thing, and just keep investing in yourself until you get to that place where employers find you valuable to add to their, to their workforce. And the first thing is, work on yourself, work on, what you can contribute. It's about service as well. You might have to serve somewhere before you get an opportunity. I would say to young people as well, what you're looking for is not a job, it's an opportunity to demonstrate who you are. I think one of the things that we're responsible as parents is to be a custodian of a gifting that God has placed on the inside of them, to help them to identify that gifting and to provide them channels. And it's not always about throwing money at things that concern our kids. So really, plumber, if that's what they want to do, but they must find the economic, how does it make you money? How does it feed you? So you're not a liability to yourself, you're not a liability to your parents, but all society at large. Those are the questions that we also need policies and things like that in government to help us answer.
It's been great having you on the Heart of the Matter.
Thank you very much.
And I know that our viewers have benefited from what you've said. Now, if you're watching out there and right now you're moved to say, what can I do to help the work of AGDC, get in touch, make that call, get in touch with Ditto and volunteer your services, your resources, whatever it is, and all the information will be on the screen so that you can make that call. Ditto, it's been wonderful having you again.
I'm really grateful. Thank you very, very much.
We're grateful for having you on the program. Viewers, it's been fun having you bringing this program into your homes. We'll be back again with the Heart of the Matter, same time next week. Until then, stay blessed.
If you look at it from this perspective, even if it's only for selfish reasons, we have a responsibility to solve the social problems in our community. Now, every young person that is out of work is at risk of being taken into some evil act one way or the other. And if 6 out of 10 graduates coming out of university don't find jobs, then we're looking for trouble. We're talking about all this Yahoo boys issue, which is a factor that is affecting our national brand, and ultimately our national brand affects business, and it affects all of us. You walk through any airport and you present your passport, the Nigerian brand reflects on how you're treated. So our children, no matter where we send them to in the world, best schools, best education, everything, where are they going to live? In Nigeria or outside of Nigeria as a 4th or 5th class citizen? If we want them to live in Nigeria, are they going to live as isolated cases, or they're going to live in a community? What kind of community are we building for our children? So at the end of the day, if we don't help to build the society and build the community, we ourselves are at risk. We all live in houses that are like prison yards. You build these fancy houses and then you need a fence this high, you need electric wires and everything. That's a prison. It's only in prisons you have that. But we don't have a choice, because we already have a high disconnect between one class and another class, and we're increasing it every day because these problems are not solved. So it's in our personal self-interest at the end of the day for every person that has the capacity or has the capability or has the resources and the opportunity to be involved in changing our society whichever way.